Greetings. Welcome to ETV World. I'm Tewodros Adhanom here with you to shed light on who Tewodros Adhanom is briefly on this segment. Do stay with us. Anyone looking hard into Tewodros' record as a former Minister of Health following his studies abroad, his dissertation, Dr. Tewodros returned to Ethiopia and later serving in Ethiopia's federal government for over a decade as Minister of Health from 2005 to 2012, Minister of Foreign Affairs from 2012 to 2016, and eventually he took office as WHO Director General on 1st of July 2017, while the foundation of the TPLF-led EPRDF's shaking intensified. When he left to Geneva, his co-TPLF founders flocked to Mekelle for Ethiopia and as a public health official, while encounter a chamber of horrors as he was a high-ranking member of the TPLF, an organization that gets about as close as you can think of to an African version of Nazis. Those who declared Amhara as their enemy right in their founding manifesto and who ludicrously believe, like Nazis, that their ethnicity created a bunch of supermen who inspired other cultures. Besides, he and his TPLF members have firm stand to see weak and divided Ethiopia on the basis of ethnic lines, ready enough to collaborate with all Ethiopian enemies, Trojan horses of the West. As for Tewodros, no one in the West, it seems, ever heeded the call that this incompetent and corrupt official should not be handed so vital as a position as Director General of the World Health Organization. They might have examined how he served as chair of the Global Fund to fight AIDS, tuberculosis, and malaria from 2009 to 2011. The Office of the Inspector General, Tewodros and his pals misused more than $7 million, and it would have liked, very much pleased to get its money back. If we translate the polite language of the report, the auditors found lousy accounting, slipshod budgeting and monitoring, and barely anyone keeping track of where the money went. Just as money could suddenly disappear, Tewodros could make entire diseases disappear. In 2006, while he was in charge, the Federal Ministry of Health preferred to call cholera acute water diarrhea when it hit the Amhara region and killed about 200 people. The next year, which had already taken more than 680 lives. In 2009, the death toll was even higher from cholera at more than 700 people in 5 regions. Failing to respond properly to epidemics, doing the politically convenient thing instead of the medically urgent thing, cholera, COVID. Are you noticing a pattern? And yet, Tewodros is still backed as the guy who should be minding global health under the UN's mandate. We have not even discussed Tewodros' tenure as Minister of Foreign Affairs, serving a regime that placed centers for torturing political dissidents right in the heart of Ethiopia's capital. Tewodros Adhanom must feel pretty untouchable these days. From his infamous tweet last June to his shameless abandonment of impartiality for his office, by it's been painfully clear for a while whose side he's on. His blatant biased tweets, and when Ethiopia acted within its rights and complained, and then moved in record time to block an investigation request. The West, of course, has been happy to keep backing Tewodros and throw Ethiopia under the bus for its own foreign policies, and yet the evidence has been out in the open all this time that Tewodros will even sacrifice the safety of the world in terms of pandemics for the political agenda of the TPLF. Tewodros was playing a regime of proportional response. You won't support the TPLF publicly, okay? We'll wrap your knuckles publicly. For those who want to jeer and say conspiracy theory again, this is a guy who has made his sympathies for the TPLF public and for all to see while holding one of the most important jobs at the United Nations. We can witness it from his biased and one-sided tweets that he has shared and how many millions died because this man put the political and military goals of his cronies ahead of the global health concerns. How many could have been saved had he done his job properly instead of acted out of self-interest? Something else to consider. The strategic leadership of the World Health Organization essentially supports the use of child soldiers. He also never exposed TPLF's destruction of schools, health centers, public institutions, and infrastructures in the Amhara and Afar regions. Think about that for a moment. None of this is yesterday's news. It's still of vital concern to many medical professionals in different countries. To the WHO's Board of Executive Officers and the Director General for Kenya's Ministry of Health, a collection of academic and medical associations called for the removal of Tewodros. Dr. Tewodros's partisan press releases, his media interviews, and social media posts all go against the regulations of the WHO and constitute a violation of the WHO's ethics guidelines, reads the letter in part. His social media posts, for example, are so blatantly one-sided that the line between his private view and WHO's position is blurred. A cursory look at his official Twitter account reveals the extent to which he would go to highlight the harm and destruction in Tigray region while completely ignoring the destruction in the Afar and Amhara regions. He has abused his position as head of WHO to advance a political agenda. While the signatures of various Ethiopian medical groups might be deemed biased, not all these signatories can be so easily dismissed, and they include the South African Medical Association and the Lesotho Medical Association. Aside from the fact that Tewodros has no medical degree yet runs the WHO, virologist Tewodros Adhanom, who does have impeccable credentials as a distinguished professor emeritus at the University of California, said to a local media, "To me, he is totally unfit, ethically biased, professionally lost his integrity and competency-wise as well." Alan Whiteside, an expert in global health policy, argued on the same program. The problem is that Tewodros is an authoritarian, politician, and a bureaucrat. He wasn't great in the non-pandemic period of leading the WHO, and I'm afraid he's terrible with regards to COVID. Whiteside pointed out that Tewodros has kept his focus on Tigray while he might have shown interest in other conflicts such as the political situation in Myanmar or the rising tensions in Ukraine. He is chief social media campaigner for terrorist TPLF and gave much of his time for this, utilizing his office position. But he wasn't, and he hasn't, and he won't. Because for Tewodros, only one part of the world matters. None of this, the blatant partisanship, the incompetence, the lack of transparency, has made a dent on the thinking of the WHO's own board, and as Al Jazeera put it, representing countries from around the world through their weight behind him. If only they knew Tewodros the way Ethiopians do. Finally, what I would like to say is the harm that Tewodros continues to inflict not only on Ethiopia, but on an unsuspecting world needs to stop. And that, ladies and gentlemen, wraps up this segment of ETV World. Make sure to follow and subscribe to our social media channels for more captivating content circling on national, continental, and international issues.